Redditors, what are your most interesting roommate stories? I'm pretty sure I used to live with a hobbit. Man about 5 inches 1. Curly brown hair. Constantly cheerful demeanor, never wore shoes. Inside or out, literally slept on the floor in what can only be explained as a nest of blankets. Started a garden and encouraged me to eat his tomatoes all the time, would bring home samosas and other goodies. Always giving me half just because he and his wife had a dream of living off the grid in a tiny home on a truck. I love he's doing well. My roommate once created a whole new life form by leaving beans in the fridge until they molded so bad they became pure white. Then she got mad when I threw it away because she was going to use it later. First college roommate rarely did laundry and would borrow my underwear, especially for dates, and return them dirty, unwashed. I told him in unequivocal terms to keep his hands off my junk, but he'd borrow whatever he needed anyway. I spent over a year falling asleep to the angry, muffled whisper but not really arguments between my roomie and his girlfriend. Just muffled enough that I couldn't understand what the problem was. But they were clearly not happy together. So I'd just lie in bed wondering, what's my duty of care here? Like they weren't violent with each other. And it wasn't like one person was terrorizing the other. It was just two young people in a consensual and mutual spiral of despair.
When he skipped out on rent, and moved while I was at work, he left behind some of the most interesting porn I've seen. He was into amputees and urine. He also vomited on the carpet, never cleaned it up and it ate through. I didn't get my deposit back.
We met when we showed up for dorm room assignments our freshman year of college. Almost 50 years later, we're still the closest of friends. I recently attended his daughter's wedding. A grand affair. Because he happens to be uber wealthy. At one point I found myself choking up. And it wasn't for the bride and groom. It was for John and me. How far we've come from that first awkward handshake a half-century ago. There are plenty. But one of my roommates used to sleepwalk and sleep talk almost every night and I was the only one who'd be awake whenever it would happen. I'd witness her cleaning our fridge, sealing our opened bag of chips, and I'd hear her quote Shakespeare in her sleep. What made her go back to bed was me asking her to sleep and she'd look at me and close her eyes. Whenever I asked her if she recalled any of it, the answer was always no. Not exactly a roommate. Had to live at friend's place for 2 weeks. And he lived with a roommate. Anyway, one morning I wake up to find my friend missing. He had taken stuff too, so I ask his roommate where he is. We didn't know each other at all. And he said, he went to different city for a job. So, few days pass by and one night I was alone. I hear the doorbell ring. I open it. It's the roommate covered in blood. I just ask what happened. And he just said he passed out and fell into rose bushes. He then gets naked and I have to clean him up and send to bed. After that we became friends. I had a college roommate who was obsessed with CSI. She had a CSI pillow and sheets, blankets. She refused to turn on any lights and kept all blinds shut. She hated light and would sigh loudly if I would turn the lights on to do anything. I went to college right around when you needed a college email to make a Facebook. And she would tell me that Facebook is how they spy on you. She said she would never have a MySpace or anything of the like. She might have been right on that one. And she would always say I was a sheep and that I would have my identity stolen by them. My other roommate, we were 4 with 2 bedrooms and a common area, was extremely loud at all hours. And if you ever asked her to keep it down, even very politely, she would purposely start doing cartwheels and banging on things and singing. She claimed to be Jay Leno's niece. One more. I had a roommate that slept with a new guy every weekend and we could hear her loudly through the wall. We would tell her we heard her and she vehemently denied every time that she slept with anyone. Come on, girl. My freshman year college roommate was a random pairing. This kid partied all night and slept all day. Legit wouldn't wake up until 5 p.m. He goes Mia for like a week. I call my mom because I'm not sure he's even alive. She searches to see if he has been arrested. Before she can call me back, the cops are knocking at our door and ask, "Have you seen?" And I say no. Mom calls me back a few minutes later. He had been booked for robbery at a convenience store which was in our dorm building. He tried to hide in an air vent. He made the front page of the campus newspaper. Was expelled and I got the whole dorm to myself for the rest of the fall and spring semester. She was majorly depressed. She worked a lot and for very little money. So she would mostly come home and lock herself in her room. At some point, she stopped cleaning or doing laundry. She worked at a childcare center. And at some point contracted impetigo. Gross. But treatable. She wouldn't get it treated. However, because it was too expensive. So I lived in fear I would contract it. Let alone the other kids she was watching. She told her work it was being treated and was no longer contagious. They just believed her. She had these massive, crusty patches all over her face and just didn't care. After 5 whole weeks, she finally went to the doctor. Things were tense until her mom came to visit a few weeks later and convinced her to be committed. She had been sending suicidal messages to her mom every day for weeks. Her mom paid her rent for the next 3 months until the lease was up. And she moved back home. Never spoke again. Hope she is doing better. I taught a roommate how to boil water. Iced tea was the first thing, other than sandwiches and salads, that she had ever made. I own a house and rent out rooms in it. Right after I first got it, I was pretty strapped for cash and needed to rent out both of the rooms as quickly as possible. And unfortunately it didn't align with the usual lease start dates in town. University and college said January. May and September are the usual. I had a lady come, mid-30s, wanted the furnished room. I felt it was a little off. Why does this grown woman have no furniture? My friends basically scolded me for being judgmental. Maybe she just got out of a bad relationship. Maybe she is new to the city, etc., etc. So I rented to her. Turns out she had just gotten out of jail for dealing meth. And honestly, she was better than the other one. She did her meth business in hotel rooms. She paid cash on time. She wasn't home a lot. One time she left her little meth scale in the living room. And it inspired me to get a food scale, which was a game changer in my weight loss journey. A serving of spaghetti is pathetically small and I had no idea until I weighed it. Ended up making up a lie to get her to leave when she brought a strung-out friend home in the middle of the night because that's a little much for me. Meanwhile, the other looked good on paper. She was an early childhood educator on the supply list, except she was an alcoholic and heavy weed smoker. She never went to work because she never woke up in time. She never paid rent on time. She brought home a random group from the bar in the middle of the night on a Wednesday. She would take 3-hour-long baths in my only bathroom, and was just not my type of roommate. Finally kicked her out when she started stealing booze from me. I caught her, warned her. She did it again a few days later. I called her out on it again. Gave her a month's notice to move out. And she had the nerve to ask for the rest of the booze. So comparatively, the meth one was better. I went to UC Santa Cruz, and when I was a junior, my housemate and I had a situation with our third housemate that left us in a bind where we needed to find a new third quickly before the first of the month when rent was due. We went on Craigslist and ended up with this guy. He said he was a hairdresser. And he actually was. Unfortunately, that wasn't his only gig. We all lived together for 4 months. Things started going south pretty quickly and he kept having trouble coming up with the money to pay rent. Finally things in the house got so bad that I told our landlord that I thought my housemate and I were in danger and could he please let us out of our rental agreement early. He took pity on us and agreed. That last month Stu never gave me his share of rent or utilities. But he kept telling me he would get the money soon. The last time I talked to him, he said he was going to get the money that night. You can guess by the article what happened that night. I never heard from him again. Bastard still owes me money. Freshman year of college. I was randomly assigned a roommate to share a tiny room. 11 feet by 15 feet. I think. I was a quiet comp sci student from the San Francisco area who liked video games and D&D. My assigned roommate was a huge mechanical engineering major from the South who liked his lifted truck, dip tobacco, and getting drunk as often as possible. Needless to say, the next 6 months were not fun. He left his spit cups everywhere, constantly played loud country music, and messed around with my stuff, including scratching a nasty slur into my Office Space-esque stapler. As the year went on he seemed to get worse, probably due to finding a group of like-minded people in the dorms. Long story short, he was kicked out of the dorms about 2 weeks before the spring break. He and another guy went on a rampage through the dorm with airsoft guns shooting the little whiteboard on everyone's door. For some reason, though, he was allowed to stay until the break. I stupidly left for home before he did. And when I got back my very nice gaming PC was missing. I reported it missing, and told the police exactly where I thought it was. At his new place. They apparently searched it, and though they didn't find my computer, they found enough other stolen goods to get him expelled from school. Thankfully, my replacement roommate was a very nice, quiet guy, and the rest of the year went well. A few years back my former roommate and I let our downstairs neighbor move in with us because the guy he was living with had taken up a new habit. He'd befriended the pigeons that hung out on the rooftop outside his bedroom window and eventually started taking them inside and caring for them like pets. Shit got real dirty real quick. I used to live with 2 strippers. Needless to say, they weren't early risers. One Sunday morning, we get a knock at the front door. Jehovah's Witnesses. So, Kay goes to the door and invites them in for coffee. While buck naked, Kay is pretty, impressive naked, built like China in her prime, lots of tattoos and piercings. Needless to say, they left quickly, and we never had missionaries at our door again. My college roommate didn't know how to do laundry before we started school. We had a community washer and dryer on our floor. Probably the 3rd week of school. I went down to get a soda from the machine and I walk in and there are bubbles 4 inches deep on the floor. My roommate walks in behind me to check his laundry. He had put 3 full scoops of Tide in the washer with his load. I had to take him to an off-campus laundromat to wash all of the excess soap out of his clothes. I had a roommate who threatened to take everything I owned out of my room and put it on the sidewalk because I was keeping my bike in our living room after she had declared a not agreed upon rule that there couldn't be any personal items in our common space. 2 weeks after I reluctantly agreed to store my bike in my tiny bedroom, she ordered this table for our entryway. I have a few stories. The first involves this guy I'll call Sean. Sean owned a small house in rural NC outside of a larger city. I was looking for a place and Sean offered me his tiny camper trailer on his property as he already had people renting out the other rooms in his house but still wanted to help me out. I was having a time in my personal life. So I move into the trailer and paid like $200 per month for the trailer and access to the house. The other roommates were paying I think $300 per month each. Well, one thing led to another and I started dating one of the roommates. Let's call him Ben. So Ben and I are hanging out. It seems all good. I'm spending more nights than not in Ben's room. Sean had even encouraged Ben and me to date, so I thought he was happy for us. One day Sean came home in a blind rage and kicked me out of the house. I was sitting in the living room watching TV with the other roommates. He locked me out of the house and disconnected the electricity from the house to the tiny trailer. In January, I asked him to talk to me about what was going on and he point-blank refused to acknowledge my existence but didn't seem to have much of a problem with Ben. Finally, after 3 days, he told me what he was pissed about. 1. Cooking myself dinner and not offering him any. 2. Not buying nice beer for him. 3. Having a relationship with Ben. I moved out as quickly as I could and cut all ties with Sean. Ben and I dated for another year after that but are no longer together.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Heracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.